With a barrel nearly a meter long and a destructive power capable of penetrating tank armor, the Ukrainian Azov sniper rifle has made the Alligator a new nightmare for enemies on the battlefield. With one shot, it can disable not only soldiers, but even armored vehicles. A convoy of Ukrainian Azov troops arrives at the location to reconnoiter Russian motorized vehicles. Russian motorcyclists planned their route to avoid being easily tracked by Ukrainian Azov units, but they were wrong. They would never be able to hide from Ukrainian Azov drones. The Ukrainian Azov troops quickly tracked the Russian motorcyclists' movements and transmitted the information to the sniper crews guarding their formation, which was breaking through to the Russian hideout hundreds of meters away. 2 Russian motorcyclists are still under surveillance. They allowed the Russian motorcyclists to reach the point where they had planned to disable them. The Azov Forces drone unit was communicating with the sniper, informing him that the Russian motorcycle squadron was approaching the point they had locked down, and the Russian motorcycle squadron was aware of the drone's presence. The Ukrainian Azov snipers launched their attack. Snipers from different locations had also received information on the Russian motorcycles. After the first motorcycle was disabled by the Azov unit, which was located some distance away, they had been on alert all night, and now the Russian bikers are in their trap. After several Russian motorcyclists were disabled, the troops tasked with close-range attacks entered the hideout. They had been building the hideout for quite some time. Their goal was to secure their territory and retake territory previously controlled by the enemy. The troops guarding this hideout were no ordinary unit. They were the highly trained Ukrainian Azov unit, equipped with snipers with extremely precise aim. The Ukrainian Azov troops surrounded the enemy hideout and ambushed the enemy with boldness, having previously monitored the area via drones.
Сначала дрона, потом пехота.
They continued to shrink the enemy's territory, locking them in. When the Ukrainian Azov troops felt completely secure, they returned to their hideout. Ukrainian Azov drone troop unit in hiding. Checking the area not far from the area they occupy, the operator flies some of their FPV drones. Their goal is simple but vital. The area that looks empty, but can turn into hell at any time. Ukrainian Azov drones destroyed a motorcycle used by Russian troops as it entered their controlled territory. They simply covered the motorcycle with a sheet, hoping it wouldn't be seen by the Azov troops or the drones. I'm only showing a few motorcycles destroyed by Azov drones. Many vehicles have been destroyed by Azov troops before. On the volatile Kharkiv frontline, operators of the 8th Regiment of the Ukrainian Special Operations Forces once again demonstrated why they are considered the most precise unit in modern combat. During a close-range reconnaissance operation, this elite team detected enemy troop movements hidden inside one of the multi-story buildings previously used as a defensive point. Once intelligence and tactical sensor imagery confirmed the presence of enemy troop concentrations, the scale of the threat became clear. Vastly superior enemy forces, coupled with prepared firing positions. They sealed off entry corridors, exploited narrow spaces, and established a lethal perimeter, a trap for anyone who forced their way in. But the SOF's strength lies not only in courage, but in their ability to read the situation in a split second. With extreme combat discipline, they made a swift assessment. The numerical ratio was unfavorable. The enemy had established a kill zone. Any aggressive move could lead to unnecessary losses. The decision? A complete tactical withdrawal, leaving no personnel or equipment behind. The operators obscured their tracks, broke the firefight, and then moved positions before the enemy realized their maneuver. The Denipro River has once again become the scene of a tense conflict. The Russian military has released combat footage that shows how quickly conditions on the front lines can shift from calm to chaos in a matter of seconds. In the footage, a Russian patrol boat is traversing a calm river. The water is reflective, seemingly devoid of any threat. But the calm is an illusion. Without warning, a Ukrainian drone enters the camera frame, gliding low and precise, like a predator locking onto its prey. The Ukrainian drone operator appears to have been observing the boat's movements from afar, waiting for the moment when it is most vulnerable in the middle of the river. The Russian boat's crew can be seen attempting evasive maneuvers as the drone's shadow approaches, but the speed of the FPV makes their reactions a fraction of a second too late. Small explosions can be seen breaking the water's surface, destabilizing the boat and forcing the crew to scramble for cover. What makes this footage even more dramatic is the fact that river battles are not a typical scenario. The Denipro River, once a natural dividing line, has now become a technological duel arena: patrol boat versus attack drone, sensors versus silence, and man versus machine. River attacks like this demonstrate something much bigger: that the modern battle space is no longer limited to land and air, but also includes waterways previously considered safe from close-range drone operations. This footage is proof that the Dnieper is no longer just a waterway. Small boats can become significant targets, and FPV drones continue to change the way both sides fight. This battle wasn't just about a single ship being attacked, but about how technology, speed, and situational preparedness now determine life and death on the front lines. If we look at the entire sequence of events we've discussed, from the Ukrainian Azov's stealthy operations in Kharkiv, to the Azov drone unit operating from cover, to the surprise attack by Ukrainian drones on Russian ships in the Dnieper River, one big picture becomes clear. The war in Ukraine has entered a new phase, one in which precision, technological mastery, and the ability to read the situation are far more crucial than the number of troops or the size of the weapons. In Kharkiv, operators of the 8th Ukrainian Azov Regiment demonstrated that success is not always determined by pulling the trigger, but by the right tactical decisions at the crucial moment. Despite facing a superior enemy and an advantageous firing position, they were able to break contact without losing a single man, a clear example of how modern warfare requires brains as sharp as survival instincts. Meanwhile, the Azov drone unit demonstrates another side of 21st century warfare: operations in stealth, psychologically stressful, and dependent on detailed information scanned from the skies. From their undetected hiding places, Azov operators fly FPV drones to survey the area very close to their positions, a seemingly simple but crucial task. At such close range, a single blind spot could reveal their location and turn the battle into a disaster. Then, our attention shifts to the Dnieper River, where Russian military footage shows their patrol boats being targeted by Ukrainian attack drones. The scene highlights that even rivers, once natural dividing lines, have now become high-tech battlefields, where humans, machines, sensors, and reflexes compete in a deadly duel. The attack on the Russian ships demonstrates that there are no safe zones anymore. Seas, rivers, grasslands, even the ruins of cities all are now within the range of FPV drones, whizzing by like guided missiles. In defense industry analysis, one frequently noted development is how countries increase their production capacity when facing protracted conflicts. One example discussed by experts is Russia's plan to produce up to 120,000 glide bombs a year, a figure that demonstrates how weapons technology is increasingly focused on efficiency and volume. Glide bombs themselves are relatively simple weapons, but highly effective because they can be released remotely, gliding toward targets without requiring the firing aircraft to approach the danger zone. A Ukrainian intelligence report stated that, of the total production, approximately 500 units were long-range versions capable of reaching a wider area than previous models. For defense researchers, data like this is interesting not only because of the production figures, but because it illustrates the direction of weapons modernization. Major powers now tend to develop weapons that have lower production costs, can be deployed in large numbers, and utilize simple aerodynamic principles to increase range. Since the outbreak of a large-scale conflict in 2022, Russia has been known to significantly increase its defense industry capacity. Many production facilities now operate on a 24-hour basis, a common practice when a country prioritizes the stability of its military supply chain. Interestingly, Russia does not publicly release details of its military production, as such information is classified as classified. This is also common practice among many countries. Given that weapons production data falls under the category of sensitive strategic information, for international analysts, this secrecy allows for estimation and assessment based on field observations, satellite imagery, and reports from various official and independent sources.
Overall, discussions of Russian glide bomb production are geared more toward understanding how the country is modernizing its defense industry, rather than providing political or military assessments. From an educational perspective, this information demonstrates that weapons technology is moving toward more affordable and massive solutions, the defense industry is becoming a strategic factor in long-term conflicts, and military production data is often part of a broader analysis of a country's logistical capabilities. Understanding these patterns allows readers to see how the dynamics of the defense industry operate globally, that modernization, automation, and production capacity play as important a role as battlefield strategy. In international security studies, there is one important principle that often forms the basis of planning. Major powers do not always use their full military might when faced with tensions. This is not a matter of capability, but rather how they manage risk to prevent conflicts from escalating into something more dangerous. Europe and NATO, for example, prefer a phased approach when dealing with sensitive situations in the eastern region. Member states that do not directly border Russia typically do not engage in ground combat. Even if they must respond to a threat, their measures often take the form of indirect actions, such as maritime surveillance, protecting energy routes, or enhancing cybersecurity. In various academic forums and expert analyses, situations such as attacks on tankers or sabotage of undersea cables are often used as hypothetical examples to explain how modern conflicts can affect the critical infrastructure. These are not predictions, threats, or incentives to action, but rather academic examples that help understand how energy and communicational routes can become targets or vulnerable points in tense situations. On the other hand, when officials like Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Alexander Grushko suggest that NATO is preparing for certain scenarios, for example, a possible blockade or increased military presence in the Baltic region, it is usually discussed by researchers as part of a war of opinions and threat perceptions. Such statements help understand how international actors assess the security of strategic regions like Kaliningrad or the Baltic Corridor. Discussions about whether a confrontation will remain at the level of conventional weapons or could escalate to a more serious level often arise in strategic studies. This topic is not intended to scaremonger, but to demonstrate the importance of limits on escalation. Any country, including great powers, always calculates very carefully before taking actions that could escalate the situation. For this reason, analysts often emphasize that the use of extreme weapons, such as nuclear weapons, is at the very end of all considerations. This discussion helps explain why countries prefer controllable options, such as diplomacy, opening lines of communication, or increasing regional security before considering extreme solutions that no one wants. Ultimately, all these examples and statements paint a coherent picture of how security dynamics in Europe work. That tensions don't always lead to major wars, that many non-military options are available, and that regional stability depends heavily on risk management, not just military power. This is how modern conflicts should be viewed in an educational context, as complex, deliberate systems constantly under expert scrutiny to prevent unnecessary escalation.